National parks play a vital role in the conservation of unique ecological value of regions. This is Bulburin National Park. It's the site of one of BMRG's newest projects, the endeavour to protect the endangered species here by controlling the invasive ones.
So Bulburin is the largest remnant piece of subtropical rainforest in Central Queensland. It's a really unique landscape. It has a number of significant vegetation communities and it's got high significance to traditional owners.
This subtropical rainforest is the only home of the critically endangered Bulburin nut tree, Macadamia jansenii, of which prior to 2019 there were less than 40 individual trees on record. And that was before the terrifying bushfires of late 2019 and early 2020 that devastated much of the Australian continent. Now, this already incredibly rare plant is even rarer.
So in 2019, after a long period of drought and during extreme fire danger, a severe wildfire entered Bulburin National Park from the east. It came off freehold land and it burnt into the park for a number of months. It continued burning in the park until early February, and a second fire started during this time as well in the northern part of the park through a lightning strike. The fire was significant. It burnt a total of 7,541 hectares of country in Bulburin, so a significant wildfire.
Not only is this subtropical rainforest home to endangered plants and animals, it also holds great cultural significance to the traditional owners of the area. Preventing further damage to this area that's rich in ecosystem diversity and cultural heritage is paramount.
Bulburin National Park is important to Indigenous people because we have a traditional knowledge of the area, a connection to the country, and this is where the true macadamia nut is found. And it's so close to being a Thornhill, the Granite Creek flows through Thornhill.
Enter this new BMRG project dedicated to conserving and protecting the endangered species here.
So managing threats to an ecosystem that's recovering is quite important for various different reasons. The management of weeds is important because they can smother the recruitment of new species. So, for example, lantana stacks can grow quite quickly, and for species underneath them trying to penetrate through large stacks, it will slow down the process of the recovery.
Then, of course, there's the pig problem. Pigs are especially destructive due to their sheer size, and they trample everything, eat everything, and can even carry a number of diseases that can be transferred to humans, all while travelling in huge groups. This is where bush to bay comes in. Bush to Bay, with the help of rangers from the Department of Environment and Science, will be involved in the trapping and humane destruction of the pigs in the area.
So in this project we've found a total of 49 pigs throughout the National Park. So this was done over a sampling period of 1 month with bush to bay weed control.
Due to the increase in pig numbers in Bulburin and the devastation they're causing up there, which is becoming more and more evident every time rangers go up or visitors go up to visit the park, BMRG really targeted this particular species in a trapping project. So we worked together in engaging a contractor to come in who was managed by BMRG and was able to set up traps. In the end, we did get a good result.
As for the weed distribution, we did this in collaboration with the University of the Sunshine Coast on a student, Tahlia Ross.
So I'm looking at rainforest recovery post-fire and basically looking at what's regenerating in terms of future flammability. So the main things we're looking for is whether there's flammable versus more succulent regeneration. So that's looking at the weed species. So in low severities, we're expecting there to be less weeds, which is exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing in the high severity sites a lot more weeds, like your cat's claw, lantana, which is dry and flammable, and seeing less of the succulent weeds, which is the inkweed. So in the high severity sites, which is the canopy is completely gone and the sub-canopy, there is complete dominance of weeds. You'll get a lot less seedlings and a lot more flammable grasses.
G'dadjal Development Corporation have been undertaking weed control over 22.5 hectares.
It's important for us to manage our weeds in the national park because it affects creek beds along and properties along the downstream of us, but it also helps reduce the fuel load in and around the areas where people have, public safety to the national park, less fuel, less wildfires.
So the University of the Sunshine Coast, under the Associate Professor Alison Shapcott, ran surveys and have been monitoring over a number of years the Macadamia, jansenii populations in Bulburin. Very involved in going up and monitoring all of the populations, looking at what the survival rates were of the plants directly after the bushfire, and then several months later going back to see what recovery there was of plants that were affected.
So the distribution of cat's claw throughout the national park has been quite extensive pre-bushfire as well. So measures from QPWS have been undertaken for the dual beetle out in the national park, but we're yet to assess the success rate of that beetle in the biocontrol.
Also the surveys with the Queensland Herbarium of the ringed thin-tailed gecko were very successful. We found that its habitat had been affected a little, but we still were finding some populations of those geckos, but still identified areas where the fire had reached into their habitat where we hadn't expected it to go. Certainly took on board the information from the survey with the Queensland Herbarium as well to know how to manage those populations. The silverhead antechinus was surveyed through Queensland Parks and Wildlife and Harry Hines' team, and also we were very encouraged that we found populations of those in areas that hadn't been affected by fire, and also still in areas that had been affected by fire. However, it identified to us that they could be found in some rainforest areas as well as the open woodland that they normally would be found in. As part of these projects, we're able to work collaboratively with G'dadjal to spray the biomass grasses and weeds along the road edges and into the forest where they were starting to take over, where the forest had opened up. We also put in a fire line. Queensland Parks and Wildlife were able to put that in order to stop the fire progressing into the park from the east. And we put in a cattle exclusion fence to stop cattle from coming in and reaching into the areas, particularly where the macadamias are growing, and damaging those macadamias. So they were all funded from the bushfire recovery project and have all at this point been quite successful.
So Bulburin National Park is one of the key assets within the region. So for BMRG to be able to facilitate a recovery project here post-bushfire, it's quite a great achievement. It's great to see the work being completed to a high standard and for our work to be aiding the recovery post-bushfire.
If these invasive species can be controlled and their impacts mitigated, then the strength and stability of this unique ecosystem will be increased phenomenally. The removal of the pests will in turn remove the pressure that's being placed on the native species that are currently struggling to compete here. Upon the completion of this project, it is hoped that even the most critically endangered species here, like the Bulburin macadamia, will be preserved and protected into the future.